Uh, is Haliburton still under investigation by the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Texas for possible violations of terrorist sanction law?
I think that the investigation is ongoing. We have responded to all the inquiries from the Department of Justice, and we did that as late as 2005. And for the past 24 months, we have heard no additional information from them. But we have cooperated fully.
Haliburton employees testified. Did they testify before the grand jury?
At this point, I do not have that information, but I would be happy to get it and provide it to you.
And please. Let's see if they received subpoenas in this case. Was the decision in January 2005 have anything to do related to the U.S. Attorney's criminal investigation of Haliburton's activities?
The decision in 2005 was based upon a number of factors. I was not participating in those conversations, so I cannot tell you with any certainty of whether that issue was discussed, but I do know that there were a number of issues that went into the final decision on the withdrawal from Iran.
Mr. Thompson, you said that I think it was the fire department pension.
Fire and police department pension funds.
Police and fire own some 400,000 shares in Haliburton company.
Yes. At that point.
Are you aware of the fact that the Vice President of the United States had more than that on option, over 400,000 shares on option?
I was not, Senator.
Yeah, he was. Do you know what the final exercise date is on those options?
I don't.
I do. It's 2009, after its full service to the United States government, all the way through there. Mr. Thompson, given your work and research, do you think that companies will stop doing business with terrorist nations on their own, or is legislation needed?
Unfortunately, it's become clear over a period of years that while things may be legal, it doesn't mean that they are ethical. And I believe that unless you close the loophole, companies will continue to attempt to do business in backdoor fashions.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Senator Brown. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your willingness and your candor with us. Willingness to be here and your candor. Ms. Williams, I look at this. I'm not a member of this committee. I'm new to the Senate. I was in the House for 14 years, and I'm just sort of amazed by how all this has unfolded in the last 5 years or so. Your company is one that's had billions of dollars in government contracts. Your company has made settlements with the government, I believe, because of overcharges on services to our troops, often with non-delivery to the troops, often underperformance on those contracts. Your company has had millions of dollars in contracts with terrorist states, building up their economy. The Vice President of the United States, former executive of your company, draws a pension 3 times what the average American, middle-class American earns in a year. Now you pretty much say, and the Republican Congress has pretty much done nothing about any of this. Now you say 3 things today. You say, well, the company was a subsidiary. You say the company acted perfectly appropriately under the law, and then you said, besides, the French do it too. The French company seems even worse. Do you or do other top executives at Haliburton really understand why the American public is so angry about this?
I would say that the company has been under the spotlight for a long time. We see what's printed in the press about us, and we listen to what our own employees have to say. And I think that from a purely sympathetic standpoint, we can look at and say, based upon the information that the American public gets, that they have a right to their opinions and to voice their opinions about our company in any way they see fit.
Based on the information the American public gets, but the information is factual. Huge government contracts, overcharging in those contracts, non-delivery and underperformance in those contracts when it affected American troops in the field. The vice president getting huge pension from your company. dealing with terrorist states, all of those things are not just, you almost say it dismissively, that's just what the American public hears. Well, those are facts that the American public hears. In your response to Chairman Dorgan about why you've sort of moved out of Iran finally, albeit reluctantly, none of those answers had anything to do with patriotism or anything to do with the values that I think our country holds dear. They were all sort of business decisions. And I understand you're a business, but I understand that most businesses in our country operate at least under some modicum of values and patriotism. And I just have been disappointed in all of those answers, but more so, I appreciate your courage being here. I don't appreciate the company's behavior, the company for which you work. I guess I'll shift to Mr. Commerce for a moment. You said that North Korea and Cuba are concluded in the Trading with the Enemies Act. Should we, as we figure all this out, working on Senator Lautenberg's bill and the bill that Senator Dorgan and I have introduced, how do we improve the current sanction regimes? Do we put it under the Trading with the Enemies Act? Is that something we should expand? Should we do it through other kinds of legislation? Give us, and you too, Mr. Thompson, give us your recommendation specifically on what we should do.
I think there are many courses of action that can be taken, including to clarify under IEPA the coverage and the definition of U.S. persons and how that might relate to another line that's also in that act as well as in the executive order about avoiding or evading the sanctions, which is also illegal for a U.S. person to do by using a foreign entity. So there are ways to look closely even at the existing authorities and to reinterpret them, to clarify them in various measures and acts in the legislature. But I do think it is a loophole that does need to be dealt with. In part, the loophole does have a rationale. That rationale, some of us recall from the time of the gas pipeline, when some foreign countries were very upset with what they viewed as the extraterritorial extension of U.S. authorities. And so we do walk something of a line here, but I think in the current context of Iran, it is very essential that we get to that line, and that line I think clearly does include foreign subsidiaries of U.S. company where the profits are going to the U.S. company and where it is ultimately the corporate decision of the parent rather than the subsidiary with respect to what its conduct is. And I think we see that in the parent being able to call it off and saying no longer will these subsidiaries do this kind of business. So I think that in this kind of context, we should make it clear that a foreign subsidiary that is owned and that is corporately controlled by the parent should be covered. Not a question of day-to-day management, but a day-to-day who can make that ultimate decision. And if that ultimate decision does, as in fact it does, reside here in the United States by a U.S. person, then I think it should be obligatory on them to fall in line with the same measures that any other U.S. corporation would fall into.
Mr. Thompson, anything to add to that?
Times have changed. The world has changed. And the fight against terrorism is one that now, goes into corporate boardrooms around this country and around the world. We need to close the loopholes now. And opportunities for companies to do business in any fashion, any U.S.-based company, whether it is directly or indirectly, those loopholes should be closed. We need to choke the flow of dollars off to some of these regimes and some of these countries. Those are dollars that come back to haunt us, that come back, used against us in other ways. So we need to close those loopholes now, and it is in any way possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.